Today, I will be demonstrating the creation of a pine cone patchwork design. Originally, during times of trade, our ancestors didn't always get the best fabrics. They would get the scraps, the remnants, the undesirables. They would get the scraps, the remnants, and the undesirables. But my people were resourceful enough to take what some people would think as unusable and to create what we consider beautiful works of art today. And not only they were beautiful, they were practical. These designs would be used in blankets and quilts. My people drew their inspiration from nature. When you go down to Robertson County, what's the first thing you think of? When I go down back home, I think of pine cones. Every time I go down home, the more and more pine cones I see, and the more and more pine trees I see, I know that I'm feeling closer to home. This is where my ancestors drew their inspiration to create the pine cone patchwork. Do you see how my apron resembles the bottom of this longleaf pine cone? To begin, I have this pile of scraps. This pile of scraps actually came from regalias that my mama's made in the past. I would tell her, "Mama, why do you keep this stuff? It's not like you're ever going to use it again anyway." And she would say, "Brianna, you know I don't throw anything away. I'm going to use it someday." So here I am, making pine cones from her scraps. So what we would begin is we would take our scraps and we would create uniform squares. These squares were eventually turned into the triangles we used for the pine cone. I would fold it once, and then I would fold it twice. And these are what we use in our pine cones. My first step is I would take 4 of these triangles and place them thusly to create a square. This square would be the center of our pine cone. And as I keep going on, I would stitch each of these layers down. I want to change up my pattern a little bit. So I add a different color. I have to add 8 squares, 8 triangles to create the star pattern that you see. I want to make my circle even bigger. So I add 8 more of these triangles. You know, I can remember where every one of these fabrics came from. This coral color was used in one of my sister's regalias, so it just makes sense. Every pine cone tells a story. So, you're kind of wondering, this does not really look like a circle yet, does it? It looks kind of funny. But don't worry, I'm going to show you guys how to make that famous circle we all know. Finally, what I would do is instead of using 8 squares, 8 triangles, I use 16 triangles. And I lay them out thusly, beginning my circle. Now, you could go on and create your circle even larger, but I'm going to end it right here. To finish it off, what you would do is instead of you placing your triangles inward, you would place them outwards to create the points like you see on my apron. Our final step in creating the pine cone patchwork is to add a ring of fabric. This not only hides the seams, but it completes the circle and finishes my story. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. That was contestant number 1, Brianna Jacobs Polanco of Greensboro, and I'm going to give him just a second so we can set up for our next contestant. April see it. All righty, our next contestant is contestant number 2, Samantha Brooke Lanning. While she's getting set up, she is going to be storytelling about the Kahari quilters while demonstrating quilting. And I have to say, I was tickled pink to see Miss Joyce today on the 5th floor. I haven't seen her in years, and a lot of the Kaharis took care of me when I worked with ETS, and I ate really good during those quiltings at the tribal school, so thank you so much.
Storytelling. As you may know, in the Kahari community, our seniors are known for their quilts. I would like to share a little piece of the Kahari quilter story with you. As I sit here tonight, I remember stories that had been passed down from my elders as we sat around the quilter's rack. I've learned that in the summer, the women would work the fields to store food for the winter, and once it got cool, they would then start quilting. They would take turns at each other's home, a quilt rack was set up, and everyone gathered around to help. While the women quilted, the children would play under the quilt. Today, we are able to purchase the patterns in the designs and colors that we desire. However, not so long ago, it wasn't that way. They had to use whatever they had on hand, such as scraps, old clothes that the children had on wrong, pants, shirts. They also used overalls. They would then cut them out in squares and sew them together to make the quilt top. The very first time I quilted using a print stitch pattern, I held my needle in an angle. My stitches came out slanted. The elders that told me how to quilt explained that usually they would take the stitches out. However, they were going to leave mud in so I could see my progress from when I started. The correct way to quilt is put one hand under the quilt, pick a spot alongside your pattern, and you're going to push it through. Once the needle hits the tip of your finger, pull it through, and you're going to use this hand on top to feel for the needle as you're pushing it back through. And you're going to go as close to the other stitch as you can. Your stitches should be short, neat, and straight. Mother, daughter, grandmother, granddaughter, aunts, cousins, and friends. For generations, women have quilted together. They've shared stories, sung songs, traded recipes, and yes, they talked about their men, all while stitching and pulling the threads through the cloth. Your quilt is a part of you and your family. This part of you will live to tell your story for generations. Because of the seniors, these stories will live on. So remember, the next time you see a quilt, it is not just a quilt. Every quilt has a story to tell. Take the time to listen to your elders so that the stories will continue on. While you're here this week, take a few minutes out of your time and visit the quilt room and look at all the amazing quilts. Don't let traditions end with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. number 3 is Miss Savannah Baker. Savannah is going to be demonstrating a traditional loving story using dramatic skills and artistry. Thank you, Miss Savannah.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I am honored to be bringing you a story from my people about the symbolism of our sacred eagle feathers. In the beginning, God gave the animals and wisdom, knowledge, and the power to talk to men. The wild animals and the little wild spirit would teach a chosen man songs and dance, and much ritual and lore. The most loved creature by God was the eagle, for this great bird tells the story of our lives on earth. For the eagle lays only 2 eggs, and everything in the world is divided into 2. There is man and woman, or male and female, and this is true for all creatures. Animals, plants, birds, trees, all of these creatures give birth to 2 kinds of children so that life itself may continue. Man has 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 hands, 2 feet, a body, and a soul, or substance and shadow. With his eyes, he can see both pleasant and unpleasant things. With his ears, he can hear both joyful and sad news. With his nose, he can smell both good and bad odors. His mind is divided into good and evil. With his right hand, he may commit many acts of evil, such as starting war, or striking another person's face in anger. But his left hand, which is near to his heart, is full of kindness. And so then, his left foot will lead him down the right path, while his right foot may lead him down a path of destruction. And so it is with all men. We have both light and dark, day and night, summer and winter, war and peace, and life and death. To remember this lesson, look to the great eagle, the favorite bird of God. For this bird has feathers that are divided into 2 parts, light and dark. The light, the white part, represents the bright and cheery days of summer, and the black represents the cold, dark days of winter, just as man himself has both daylight and darkness, and summer and winter. My children, my elders, my people, remember this lesson, for it is you who will choose the path in life that you will follow. Thank you.